The story begins with a glance, stolen, fleeting, but charged with something undeniable. A spark ignited in the quiet corners of the office, flickering in the spaces where words dared not tread. She intrigued me in a way I hadn't expected, her presence stirring something deep within, something I could neither name nor ignore. And when I discovered the truth, it was a storm in my chest, tearing through the carefully constructed walls of reason. For 7 years, I have shared my life with her. In the beginning, it felt like a dream, as if we were written in the stars, destined to collide and merge into something greater. We thrived in shared passions, sports that set our spirits ablaze, entertainment that drew us closer, and social causes that stirred our souls. And the places we dreamed of, oh, the places we longed to escape to, hand in hand, far from the weight of the world. But time is a thief. Slowly, a shift crept in, subtle at first, like the fading warmth of the sun before a cold night settles. My wife, once my refuge, became distant. The light in her eyes, the one that once reflected me so clearly, dimmed into something unreachable. 7 years together, yet our love felt like a secret, a fleeting joy stolen from the world. For 5 of those years, we lived in that beautiful illusion, wrapped in the warmth of something only we understood. I still remember how she looked at me in those quiet moments when the world faded into the background. Her touch was gentle, soothing, a silent promise of always. She was my anchor, my constant, the one who caught me when I stumbled. We shared countless adventures, hiking through whispering woods, camping beneath an endless sky of stars, losing ourselves in wildlife resorts where the world felt infinite. Our hearts beat in sync, drawn together by the same passions, slipping away to catch the game, caught in the thrill of something unsaid but deeply felt. I always wished I could hold on to her exactly as she was, from the first moment our eyes met. Her beauty struck me like a force of nature, brunette curls framing a face that lit up with a smile capable of stopping time. And there was something else, something unspoken yet palpable, something in the way she looked at me that made my heart race. In her presence, I felt cherished, as if every doubt I ever carried vanished into the shadows. But time changes things. And then, Marge. He stepped into her life like an unexpected gust of wind, stirring the calm waters of our world. At first, she spoke of him in passing, her voice tinged with amusement, admiration, a harmless acknowledgement of a new presence in her day. But soon, there was something different in the way she said his name. A softness. A quiet flutter in her voice. A secret woven between syllables. I dismissed it at first. But then, the distance between us grew. She became less present, her mind wandering to places I could not follow. She slipped away into the night, something she had done before, but this time, the air was thick with an unspoken tension. Then came the night of the gathering. We were meant to be with friends, lost in familiar laughter, yet she was nowhere to be found. Hours passed, and worry gnawed at my chest. The silence was unbearable. No calls. No messages. Just an emptiness that stretched on forever. I reached out, grasping for answers, but all I found were whispers. Jane, hesitant but honest, told me what I feared the most: my wife had been with Marge. A slow burn of frustration settled within me, struggling to make sense of it all. Why? After all these years, after everything we had built, how could she so easily slip away for someone who had barely entered her life? I waited, the weight of unspoken words pressing down on my chest, until finally, she walked through the door. The dim light of the living room caught her features, and in her eyes, I searched for something: guilt, regret, explanation. Instead, I found uncertainty. "What's the matter? Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice soft, guarded. I hesitated before whispering a single name. "Daniel." Her expression faltered, conflicted. "I lost track of time," she admitted, but her voice carried something heavier than that, a longing, a sincerity that made my heart ache. And then, the question I wasn't sure I wanted the answer to. "Who were you with last night?" She hesitated for only a breath. "Jane. Sophie." A pause. "Anne. Marge." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unsaid truths. The next day, the silence between us became unbearable. She was always my anchor, the one who never faltered, never let me doubt. But now, doubt wrapped around me like a shadow, whispering of things left unsaid. She had always been the one to lift others up, to be there without hesitation. So why did she let this happen? And then, another night, another silence. She returned home, but her warmth did not. Her eyes remained glued to her screen, fingers tapping as if reaching for something, or someone, just beyond my grasp. Who is it that steals your attention? I asked, my voice barely steady. She looked up, startled. Just a friend from work, she murmured, but her eyes betrayed her, a glint of something secret, something she wasn't ready to name. I exhaled sharply, my mind racing. Is it Marge's? She blinked. No, but then, softer, but what if it is? A challenge. A confession. A warning. I had never seen this side of her before. A part of her I had never been allowed to touch, never even knew existed. And in that moment, I knew, whatever this was, whatever had been growing between them, it was no longer something I could ignore. The air in the office was thick with the scent of paper and the faint hum of distant voices, but none of it mattered. Not when she was near. It had started with something as simple as a glance, stolen in the quiet moments between emails and meetings, a fleeting second in which the world seemed to narrow down to just the two of us. There was something about her presence that pulled me in, a gravity I couldn't escape, no matter how much I told myself I should. For 7 years, I had built a life with her, my wife, a woman who once felt like my destiny. We were inseparable at first, drawn together by shared passions, sports that sent our hearts racing, entertainment that made us laugh deep into the night, and social issues that stirred our souls. We dreamed of escaping together, whispering plans for far-off places beneath the stars. But those dreams belonged to another time, another version of us. Something had changed. The warmth that once defined our love had begun to fade, slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. She grew distant, her smiles hollow, her touch absent. I told myself it was just the weight of time, the inevitable ebb and flow of marriage. But deep down, I knew better. For 5 years, I had believed our love was untouched by the world, something sacred and secret. But then he arrived, Marge, her new supervisor. She came home different, her eyes sparkling in a way I hadn't seen in years, her voice soft with admiration when she spoke his name. She whispered about him in passing, unaware of how the words twisted inside me. She spoke of his charm, his effortless way of making her laugh, and the way he made her heart flutter. At first, I dismissed it. A harmless admiration. A passing infatuation. But then, the nights grew longer. The silence between us stretched into something unfamiliar, something unbearable. She started coming home later, her excuses growing weaker. A night out with friends. A gathering at work. I told myself it was nothing, that she was still mine. But then the whispers started. At a gathering with friends, our eyes met across the room, and for the briefest moment, I thought I saw something familiar there, the love we once shared. But it was fleeting, gone as quickly as it had come. She laughed easily, but her laughter was no longer mine to share. I reached out to touch her, to bring her back to me, but she was already slipping away. One night, she didn't come home. Hours passed, and worry gnawed at me, the silence thick with the weight of uncertainty. I reached out, desperate for an answer, but there was nothing, no response, no explanation. When she finally returned, her expression was unreadable, her words careful and measured. She said she lost track of time, caught up in the excitement of a friend's birthday celebration. But something in her eyes told me there was more, something she wouldn't say. Doubt festered in me, a sickness I couldn't shake. I needed to know the truth. I slipped a tracker into her car, a reckless decision, but the pull of certainty was stronger than the weight of my conscience. Days passed, and then, one evening, I followed her. She drove with purpose, weaving through the streets until she reached a secluded parking lot. My breath caught as another car pulled up beside hers. The door opened, and he stepped out, Marge. Without hesitation, she slipped into his car, the door closing behind her like a final, resounding betrayal. I watched, my heart pounding, every nerve in my body screaming at me to turn away, to forget what I had seen. But I couldn't. For the next few days, she carried on as if nothing had changed. She smiled at me over breakfast, her laughter soft and familiar, her hands warm in mine. But now I knew. Now I saw the mask she wore, the deception woven into every glance, every word. I needed proof. While she was at work, I searched. Through drawers, through forgotten corners of our home, through the pieces of a life we had built together. And then I found it, an iPad, hidden beneath a stack of papers. No password. Just waiting. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that. But something inside me had already unraveled, and I couldn't stop myself. The messages were endless, a history of whispered secrets and stolen moments. But it was the photos that shattered me. There she was, captured in moments of intimacy I had never seen before. And then the videos, the final, undeniable proof. Not just of them together, but of something else, something deeper. Another woman. Another man. And Marge, watching from the shadows. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a fleeting attraction. It was something she had chosen. Something she had embraced. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was gone. I confided in Daniel, the only person who could understand the weight of my grief. He listened, his face dark with something I couldn't quite place: pity, anger, sorrow. He told me what I already knew but couldn't bring myself to accept. That I had to leave. That she had already chosen her path. That I deserved better. The papers arrived 3 weeks later. The end, neatly summarized in black ink. I left them on the kitchen table, beside my wedding ring. A silent farewell. No grand confrontation, no final plea for answers. She didn't even ask me to stay. I walked away from the life we had built, from the love I had once believed was unbreakable. The city blurred behind me, distant and unrecognizable. At Adam's place, I sat in silence, the weight of it all pressing down on me. I had lost her. But maybe, just maybe, I had found myself again.